So all of that buildup was to tell you something you already know. The test has a way of making even seemingly simple equations difficult to solve. Now, I know you've all run into this. You're minding your own business, you're solving for x, and suddenly you have like a 37 and a 19 in the denominator of two fractions that you're expected to add together. Or it looks like you can't move anything around in the equation anymore, even though you're not even close to an answer. Yeah, the test is pretty good at creating situations like that, but we're going to make you even better at getting out of those situations. We're going to teach you how to quickly and easily get around any arithmetic or algebra obstacle the test puts in your way. Now, this is how it works. In order to manipulate any equation on the test, no matter how convoluted or tricky they make it, you only have to identify the 4 things we hate to see in our equations and learn how to get around them. Now, these are the 4 things we hate to see in our equations. Number 1, plus and minus signs. Number 2, denominators. Number 3, unfactored numbers. And number 4, radical signs. Now in this lesson, we're going to teach you how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide fractions. Not because we didn't think you were paying attention in the 4th grade, but because we're going to show you a very different way to manipulate fractions. And as we do that, we're going to teach you how to get around the first 2 obstacles, plus and minus signs and denominators. Now, next step, read the lesson, pay particular attention to the way Milo wants you to add fractions. It's probably not the way you learn to do it in math class, but it's super important to do it this way on the test because you'll avoid most of the common traps and pitfalls they kind of lay for you. Also, make sure you understand horizontal factoring. Again, Milo will explain how it works, and again, it's super important, and it will become one of your best friends on the test. And finally, if you can easily handle questions 1 and 2 in Milo's in-class practice, you're doing great. Now I'll be back later to go over the highlights. Hey everyone, we're about to jump into a couple of examples, but before we do, I just wanted to let you know that we're offering this entire course for $25 because, well, we don't think that world-class test prep should just be for the rich kids. We think it should be for everyone. So if you're interested in the course, we have details and links right down there in the description. All right, now let's head over to some examples. Okay, doing fractions on the test is all about getting rid of 2 things we hate to see in our algebra equations, denominators and plus and minus signs. Keep it together, dog. Okay, so we're going to teach you the best ways to add fractions and multiply fractions on the test. Now, these probably aren't the same ways your math teacher taught you how to do it. We're also going to show you a very useful trick that comes up all the time. And finally, we're going to show you how to horizontally factor. Pay close attention. Horizontal factoring is one of the essential skills on the test. And I guarantee if you learn how to do it well, your score will most definitely go up. First, let's show you a better way to add fractions. Now, I'm sure your 4th grade math teacher was a well-meaning saint, but he or she was probably interested in teaching you math. We're interested in teaching you how to score points on the test, and that's not the same thing. The best way to do that is like this. Check out this equation. Okay, first you got to figure out what the common denominator is. Whenever you add fractions, there's just no way around that. So the common denominator is 15. Now what we're going to do is multiply the entire equation through by 15. And when we do that, that allows us to cross stuff off, and we love crossing stuff off because whenever we do that, our life gets easier. So 5 goes into 15 3 times, 3 goes into 15 5 times, and then we have x times 15 on the other side of the equation. Remember, you have to multiply through the entire equation. Now we get something that is really simple. 3 times 3 is 9, 2 times 5 is 10, and x times 15 is, well, 15x. Now all we do is solve this. 19 equals 15x, 19 over 15 equals x. So by doing it this way, what you do is you don't have denominators to deal with. You literally take out the denominators in the very first move, so you've taken a huge tool away from the test. They can no longer use denominators to mess you up anymore because, well, there aren't any denominators. Now, let's try this one on your own. Go ahead, pause the video, do your work. If you get stuck, don't worry. Just restart the video, and Milo will take you through all the steps. Okay, go ahead. Very well done. Now try this one. Don't get intimidated. It doesn't matter how many fractions you have. Just multiply the entire equation through by the common denominator, and everything is going to work out fine. Okay. Pause the video, do your work. If you get stuck or when you get finished, restart the video again. Nice job. Now, honestly, half the time, they're just trying to make things look intimidating to freak you out. Seriously. So if they put variables in the denominator, yeah, it looks ugly, but it's not a problem. All we do is simply multiply the denominators together to get a common denominator. It works like this. So in this case, we have a 7 in one of the denominators and an x in the other denominator. So let's multiply those together and make the common denominator, well, 7x. And then we just multiply that through the equation just like we always do. And what we do is we look for ways to cancel out. So the 7's cancel on the first one, the x's cancel on the second one, and we've got 1 times 7x, which is going to be 7x. And just like that, we have a super simple equation. We have 2x plus 35 equals 7x. 35 equals 5x. X equals 7. So it doesn't matter how intimidating they make the problem look. We always just do the same thing. Find the common denominator, multiply it through the equation, and watch our life get a lot easier. Try this one on your own. And now remember, when you're choosing a common denominator to multiply all the way through the equation, you only have to get a denominator that's big enough so it'll cross off all of the denominators in the equation. Our goal is to cross off all the denominators because we hate them. Okay, try your hand at this one. If you get stuck or if you get finished, start the video again, and Milo will walk you through the steps. Okay, go ahead and pause the video. Very nice. Okay. Okay, so the other thing that they can do to make things intimidating, they don't have to use just variables. They can use other strange numbers in the denominator to try and freak you out. Do we care? No, we really don't. We're just going to do the same thing we always do. And what ends up happening is when we multiply that denominator through the entire equation, everything ends up crossing off and getting pretty easy pretty fast, like this. Well, this looks sufficiently intimidating with all the radical signs. Are we intimidated? No, we're not. All we're going to do is figure out the common denominator, multiply it through the entire equation, and all this is going to get very, very easy. All right, so the common denominator, I think, is root 3 times x. Easy enough. Let's multiply that through the equation. All right, let's see what crosses off. The root 3's cross off, and the x crosses off over on the right side of the equation, and we're just left with x plus x equals 2 times root 3 times root 3. Now I want to talk just a little bit about this root 3 times root 3 business because it does come up from time to time. Root 3 times root 3, that just equals 3. So this whole thing just simply turns into 2x equals 2 times 3. 2x equals 6, x equals 3. And I bet when you first saw that equation, you didn't think that it would end up being that easy, but they almost always turn out to be super simple when you multiply the equation through by a common denominator. Okay, try this one on your own. Pause the video. After you're done with your work, or if you get stuck, hit play again, and Milo will walk you through the steps. Okay, very nicely done. Let's talk about multiplying fractions. Now, multiplying fractions, like multiplying almost anything on the test, is always much easier than adding. Generally, we love to multiply and we hate to add. And why do we love to multiply so much? Because in multiplication, we get to cross stuff off, and we love crossing stuff off. It works like this. So if you have 63 over 60 times 5 over 7, well, you get to cross stuff off because the 7 goes into 63 9 times, the 5 goes into 60 12 times, and you are left with 9 over 12, which reduces to 3/4. One thing that's very important, you must know your multiplication tables up to 12. That is a non-negotiable requirement for test success. Okay, let's take a look at dividing fractions. Now, dividing fractions is almost as easy as multiplying them. All you do is turn the denominator on its head and multiply. It works like this. So if you have 2/3 over 4, well, that's the same thing as 2/3 times 1/4. Whenever we multiply, we always look for opportunities to do some fancy crossing off because we love to cross off. And just like that, that thing becomes 1/6. I want to show you one trick that comes up a lot. So what they love to do is put a fraction in the denominator and a 1 in the numerator like this. Yeah, I know it looks really confusing, but you know what? It's not a problem. All it means is that you flip the fraction in the denominator on its head and get rid of the numerator entirely. So 1 over 2/3, this becomes 3/2. 1 over 7/9, same thing as 9/7. 1 over 1/10, well, that thing is just 10. It's simple, but the test makes very good use of it. Let's try a more complicated version of this on your own. Yeah, I know this looks pretty ugly, but keep going step by step, and what you'll find is you'll be able to work your way through it. Now, if you get stuck, just hit play, and Milo will help you out. All right, go ahead, hit pause, do your work, and we'll see you after you're done with it. Very, very nicely done. Okay, finally, let's take a look at horizontal factoring. Now, if you've never heard of horizontal factoring, well, that's because Milo just made it up. But it totally describes what happens, and most importantly, it works. In fact, horizontal factoring is so common on the test that it will be your #1 way to get around those pesky plus and minus signs, and it works like this. So let's say you're given this. Now, depending how long you've been practicing test questions, I'm guessing all you want to do is cross off the 14 squareds from the top to the bottom and just be done with it. Problem is, you're not allowed to do that. So you can't cross stuff off on just one side of a plus or minus sign. You either have to cross off the entire thing or nothing at all. Now, if we could somehow turn that expression into multiplication, well, then we could totally cross stuff off. In fact, multiplication is code for crossing stuff off. But how do we do that? Yes, Milo, that's exactly right. Horizontal factoring is exactly what we want to do, and it works like this. So the first step is to see what you have that's the same on both sides of the plus or minus sign. And in this case, I see each side of that minus sign has a couple 14s in it, has 14 squared. So we can horizontally factor out the 14 squared and put what's left over inside the parentheses like this. We took 14 squared out of 14 cubed on the left side of the minus sign. That still leaves 114, which goes into the parentheses. And on the right side of the minus sign, we didn't do anything with the 3, so that goes into the parentheses. When we took the 14 squared out of 14 squared, we actually left behind a 1. I know, it's weird, but that's how it works. Now, to make sure that you did it right, you know what? We should be able to multiply that 14 squared back through the parentheses and get back to where we started. After all, we don't want to change the value of anything. We just want to rearrange things so we can cross stuff off. So let's see if that works. Yep, it does. We're back to 14 cubed minus 3 times 14 squared. Now, through the magic of horizontal factoring, we've turned a subtraction question into a multiplication question. And we can totally cross off the 14 squared on top and bottom because the 14 squared on top, it is not added to anything anymore. It is multiplied. So we get 14 minus 3 equals 11. Yes, that was the stupidest way possible to write 11. Welcome to standardized tests. Now, what I want you to do is try these two examples, and I think you'll get the hang of it. Remember, what you want to do is pull out as much as you can that is the same on the left and right side of the plus or minus sign, and then put what's left over in parentheses. As always, pause the video, do your work, and answer the question. Then hit play when you get done, or if you get stuck, and we'll take you through the steps. Okay, hit pause, go ahead. Very nice. Now try this one. Pause the video, do your work. If you get stuck, go ahead and hit play again, and we'll show you the steps, or hit play after you're done with the work. Okay, go! Great, well done. So, while it's true that we have covered only a fraction of the world of fractions, the test doesn't care about all of fractions. It mostly just cares about the stuff we just covered. And this stuff comes up all the time on the test. So be sure to do the practice. And I know you might not necessarily want to do this, but if you're serious about doing really well on the test, I want you to redo any question you missed on the practice. I want you to redo it 3 times. Now, I know that sounds unnecessary. I get it, but it's the fastest way I know to get up the learning curve. I promise. If I knew a faster way, we'd be doing it that way. Now you're doing great. Keep going. And remember, the key to high scores is practice. Okay, we'll see you next time. Hey everyone, so I hope you really liked the video and found it super helpful. If you did, make sure to hit the like button. You can also subscribe as well. Also wanted to let you know, we are offering the entire ACT and SAT course for $25 because we think that world-class test prep shouldn't just be for the rich kids. We think it should be for everyone. So if you're interested in the course, we have description and links down below. See you next time.